Welcome back to my series where I rank the top 10 crash outs in the Bible. Today we are on number 4, and we're going to talk about King David's offspring. We're going to talk about Absalom specifically, but we cannot talk about Absalom without mentioning his sister Tamar and his other brother Amnon. Now, I was reluctant to call this a crash out because this was more like a 9-year tweak out, but I think because of everything that transpired, I think a crash out is necessary. So let's get into it. We are starting with 2 Samuel 13. Now, Absalom was King David's son, right? He was one of the king's sons, and he had a sister named Tamar who was beautiful, right? And so his other brother Amnon, unfortunately, noticed that she was beautiful, and he was so infatuated with her that he would be physically sick. And so his wicked and perverse cousin Jonadab was like, "Why are you always so sick? Why do you always look like that? You're the king's son. What's going on?" So he tells his cousin Jonadab, "Hey, my sister is a baddie and I can't do anything about it." And so Jonadab was like, "Okay, well, why don't you go and pretend to be sick? You tell your dad, King David, I'm sick. Can you send Tamar to come feed me and I'll eat out of her hand?" So he does this thing. And so it works. Tamar comes unsuspectingly and makes him this meal. You know, it's her brother, and he grapes her. And after he graped her, he was so disgusted, most likely with himself, that he bolts the door behind her. Now, back in those days, the royal V-card holders, they wore these long robes and long sleeve. They had like long sleeves on the robes. So she tore the sleeves on the robe, and she put ashes on her head and went away in mourning. Now, she had went back to her brother Absalom, and Absalom was like, weren't you with Amnon? And so he puts 2 and 2 together, right? So Tamar ends up staying with Absalom the rest of her life, right? So Absalom's like, "Okay, keep quiet. I got this, right? Don't say anything." So Absalom had been stewing over this for 2 years. He didn't tell King David. King David found out and he was furious, but we're going to focus on Absalom. So Absalom had been stewing over this for 2 whole years. And one day he tells his dad, "Hey, I just hired some new sheep shearers. I'm going to have a party. You should come." And King David's like, "No, I don't want to burden you. You go ahead." And he's like, No, I think you should come." And King David's like, "No, but I send you my blessing." And so Absalom's like, "Okay, well, can Amnon come?" And he's like, "Well, why would you want Amnon to come?" And then Absalom gets irate. And so David's like, "Okay, fine. Take your brother." Weird. And so he does this thing, right? So he has this feast, and Absalom tells his servants, "Hey, you see my brother Amnon over there? When he gets inebriated enough, take him out." So his servants do this. So a servant comes up to David and was like, obviously an informant, and he comes up to David's like, "Absalom has taken out all of your sons." And so David is shocked and immediately in mourning and grief and despair. And then another servant comes up and was like, "Actually, it wasn't all of your sons. It was just Amnon." And he had been thinking about this, and this is premeditated ever since what happened with Tamar. Absalom flees. I mean, the man is gone. He didn't say anything. He took Amnon out, and the man is gone. So he banishes himself to Jeshur. I'm going to say Jeshur. He banishes himself, right? So King David mourns over his son Amnon. But after that mourning process, however long that took, he's mourning because his son Absalom